think we're going to see a time very soon where your plumber makes more than your lawyer.
Welcome back, investor, to another episode of the Passive Income Adventures. And if this is your first time here, my name is Emma Powell. Today, I have the CEO of GreenPal. We are not related. It's Pal, not Pewell. Thanks for coming with us, Brian, calling in from Nashville. Why don't you give us a quick introduction, and then I can cue us up like what this podcast does, who we're talking to, and the kind of person that you're going to be able to help with your story today.
Awesome, Emma. Thanks for having me on. So, yeah, I'm co-founder of a company called GreenPal. GreenPal is a mobile app website that works like DoorDash or Instacart, but for lawn mowing services. So, if you have real estate, if you own a home, rent a home, you can use GreenPal to hire a lawn mowing service to come out and mow your yard the same day. And then, if you like how they did, you can push another button and they come out and mow it every week. GreenPal is a 10-year overnight success, around 300,000 people using it every week all over the country to get lawn mowing done.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. I love it. Because as a self manager of real estate, this is something I really battle with. So, the type of person that we tend to have listening to this show, we're going to look at our listener data. So, if you're listening, tell me which one of these you identify with most. Probably about half of our audience is Gen Z, younger, like that 18 to 25, who are thinking to themselves, I know some rich old people. How do I get one of those to become one of those before I'm old? How do I get the rich part before the old part? And just learning everything that they can, taking small amounts of money and just figuring out where to best apply their hustle. And then the other half tend to be either business owners or high paid professionals. A lot of them own their own real estate properties. And I think that's really who we're talking today, the person who self manages 5 or 10 properties and don't really want to scale it past there. They're thinking like, how do I get more passive income? Because I recognize now that I have 5 or 8 of these things, that this rental management thing is a business, but I want to run that business as efficiently as possible. And then they're wanting to divert extra capital into more passive investments so that they're investing in somebody else's business rather than their own. And either they're high paid professionals running a little rental business, or a lot of times they're entrepreneurs, a mortgage broker, or they're running a similar type of services based business. And they feel like they are running themselves ragged in the business, but they're maybe approaching 50 thinking, how much longer can I keep doing this? So that's really the type of person that we talk to on the show. If this is your first time listening, you want to get more passive income with less work or no work. Like that's what we talk about. We pull back the curtain, pros, cons, and the realities of it rather than selling you the dream of buy my program. And then you find out the passive income isn't really passive at all. You're running a business thinking that it was going to be hands off and it's not. Brian, get us started down the road. How did you get started in this? And tell us about your evolution from young guy, Gen Zer, thinking like, how do I do this thing to where you are today running a much more efficient and hands-off business.
Yeah, so I was 20, I guess 22, 25 years ago. I was once one of those Gen Zers. Back then we were called Gen X,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be one of these wealthy people that I was cutting yards for. I realized something, that they weren't really much more smarter than I was.
Yep.
They were doing things and they were experimenting and they were trying things. And I set out, I said, oh, I'm just going to work as hard as I can in this lawn mowing business that I had. And over a 15-year period of time, built that into a real company. I built a company of about 150 people, getting it to $10 million in sales, a landscaping industry, and then sold it in 2013 to a national company operates in the space. And after that, I thought, man, that was hard. I never want to do that again. And so I took some time off and I thought I was going to retire and do this like passive investing thing. I did end up buying about 10 different single family homes as rental property investments. And I dabbled with that. And then I realized this isn't really fun. I need another project, I need another mission. I need another compass. Like, why do I get out of bed in the morning? I thought, I'm going to start another business, but I don't want to start a blue collar business like what I had. I would like to start a tech company because that looks so much more fun and glamorous. I
Sexy.
watched the movie The Social Network, and I
Yeah.
think Zuckerberg built Facebook in about 30 minutes, that movie, and it looked alluring to me. So that naivete is what got me thinking about, okay, I could build this tech-enabled marketplace that could help people find a lawn mowing service because I know the industry so well. And so the idea for GreenPal was born. There should be an app where you just push a button, you get multiple competing quotes from lawn mowing services in your neighborhood. You can read reviews, pick the one you want. They come out and do the job. And then if you like how they did, you can just book them for the whole season on the app. And that idea was still the same thing we're working on here 10 years later, making it as easy as possible to get quotes, find the best fit for you, find the most competitive prices from reliable pros and book them without even making a phone call. But the thing was, I didn't know how hard that was going to be
Yeah.
bring to life. The first thing that caught me off guard was there's a big difference between building a business, like a landscaping company or a construction company or like a real estate management company versus inventing a brand new product from scratch that has never existed and nobody knows to use. Like those two things are also, they're both businesses, but they're unrelated to each other. And it
Yeah.
took me about 2 or 3 years of beating my head against the wall, trying to figure out how to build the thing in such a way that people like to use it and that it solve people's problems. I guess it was probably 4 or 5 years before we started really getting some traction. And now 10 years in, we're nationwide all over the United States.
Well, okay. I want to back up a little bit into the building Facebook in 30 minutes thing that you just said. You said, I built a landscaping company that had 150 employees. Same kind of thing, like in a 5-second sentence. Can you tell us building that company from you as a teenager out there mowing rich dudes' lawns to where you had to go to have that many employees? What does that look like? What does that take? Like, spend a couple of minutes just expanding on that period of the story.
Yeah, it was quite a journey, and one of the fun things about it was I evolved along with the journey of growing that business. I started off just as a young kid with a push mower, and maybe that was level 1 of the video game, and the
Yeah.
next level was, okay, now you gotta get a commercial you have to do enough yards with this push to get a commercial grade lawnmower, and, like, these days, those are like 20 grand. So in 1995, that was like 7 grand. So that was a big level. Okay, now I got a commercial grade mower. Okay, so now the next level is like, how do I now? I got so many customers, but I can't get to them all, and so now I need to hire an employee. Whoa, that's a big jump. Okay, and I did that wrong. And there were many seasons where my employee was making more money than I was making, so I had to figure out
Mhm.
what's screwing up about that. And then it was, okay, now I hire another employee. And then it was, now maybe this is level 3 of the game. I need to, now I want to have 2 crews going out every day. So I'm running 1 truck and I have my first employee running the second truck. Okay. That took a couple years to figure out. And then maybe level 5 of the game is 5 of those crews. And then level 6 is 10 of those crews. And now you've got a construction crew. And so like every level of the game, you're just focusing on one level at a time. You're building the processes and the systems to get to the next level. You're also, when you're building a business from scratch, it doesn't matter what business you're in, you should be doing 3 things at all times. You should be working in the business, just making sure things are happening, customers are getting serviced on time, invoicing is going out, bills are being paid. But you should be working on the business. What does the marketing system look like? What does the customer satisfaction system look like? What does the customer retention system look like? And then the third thing is you should be working on yourself. What are the skills I have to acquire? I don't know the first thing about this new chat GPT thing. What's going on with that? How can I implement that in my business? Let me take a week and just learn everything I can about AI. Working on yourself. You should be doing all 3 of these things at all times to certain degrees, depending on what level of the game you're in. And that's how it was for me building my first company that took 15 years and now building my second company, GreenPal, that has taken a little over 10. Every year that goes by, you should be unrecognizable to yourself based on the previous year. You should be learning new skills. You should be pushing it as hard as you can. So you are learning and evolving along the growth of the business. And that's how it happened for me. And I did it wrong until I figured out how to do it right. These days, it's a lot easier because you can get access to YouTube University and learn these things. Like I had to build a sales team in year 7 or 8, figure out a sales process, and I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. These days, there's a million resources to help you through that. Back then, there was like, you could get a trade magazine and a coupon, and you mail them a check, and they might send you some audio tapes from some guy talking about it. So it's a little easier these days than it was back then.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like in ways it's almost harder though, because one thing we struggle with in our business now that we have so much information versus back in the day when I was starting my first business with very little information. People loved me for being a teacher and they wanted my information. But now there's so much free information out there that it's almost opposite. I don't even know what to do because somebody said to do it this way and somebody else said to do it that way. And so I'm going to
Right.
try this for 5 minutes. It didn't really work. So I'm going to try that for 5 minutes. And we don't really know what thing to double down on and
Yep.
say, this is going to take time. I'm committed to this path. Have you
Absolutely.
seen?
I couldn't agree more. I've experienced that so many times. The way I would describe it is, let's say you wanted to implement some new piece of AI technology into the workflows into your business, maybe around scheduling appointments for service calls or something. And let's say it was going to take you 20 hours to get from 0 to 1, get from start to finish 20 hours. I think 10 hours would probably be spent figuring out the good resources and what you wanted to, like, double click on.
Mhm.
It's like half of the battle is just getting through the BS and wading through all of the stuff that is just isn't helpful or just, quite frankly, could be like fake gurus in a sense, and just figuring that out. And okay, no, this is the mentor, or this is the resource, or this is the guy or gal that's done what it is I'm trying to do. But it's there. And I can't tell you how many times in the 10, 12 years of trying to figure out what the hell it is I'm doing building GreenPal, I've had to find these resources. And it's almost like it's the YouTube video that has 12 views. It's like the long tail, like, when we were building GreenPal from scratch, I had to figure out, like, Facebook campaigns and Google AdWord campaigns, and I was trying to figure out how Uber was doing it, and I was trying to figure out how they were, like, practitioners of spending money to get customers, and I ended up stumbling upon this video of this guy talking about how they managed $1 billion of marketing spend in Google AdWords, and he's talking like soup nuts, like how they did it, and I looked down the video, and it literally has 22 views and, like, 1 like. Like, it took me all day to find this damn thing. But if you are finally arriving at a resource that's not popular, that's probably a good signal that you're in the right place.
Oh, I don't think I've ever quite heard that because we tend to think of the reverse. Whoever has the most likes, he must know what he's doing. But there's a difference between being good at marketing and being good at the thing. I do really like I think the term masterclass is overused, but sometimes I'll come to that where he's literally just cracking open the screen or whatever he's doing his little talkie head in the corner, and he's just taking you through the whole funnel, and it takes an hour and a half, 2.5 hours, and the video has 25 views because nobody wants to sit there and do it for an
No.
hour and a half to 2.5 hours to get the whole code.
Right.
Um, what do
Tony Robbins is great, but Tony ain't gonna teach you how to get from 10 rental properties to 15. And Grant Cardone is great, but you're not gonna learn much from Grant Cardone. You need to be following the guy or gal that is in the trenches doing what it is you're trying to do to get to the next level. Like, it's important to understand, like, when you're seeking out this information, working on yourself, it's important to be getting the information from the person who's just one level ahead of you. For instance, I was watching an interview with Brian Chesky the other day, the founder and CEO of Airbnb, and he's talking about global macro trends as it relates to travel and how they're managing international markets and all these things. He's running a digital marketplace similar to GreenPal, but he might as well be on Pluto for what it is I'm trying to do. We're trying to get to $100 million a year in revenue. Airbnb is doing hundreds of billions. So for me to try to learn something from that, it's almost like it's like I need to be listening to somebody who is in a marketplace at a local level, similar to GreenPal, who is at the next level. And it's hard to find those resources that are granular at a level by level basis. If you're trying to get into passive investing in real estate, you really need to be like watching the guy or gal walking the neighborhoods, looking at his 5 rental properties and how he bought them with little cash or whatever. Like, you need to be one level ahead of where you're at. Otherwise, it's just like, where do you even start?
there's just so much about the application and the contextualization of the information that we're getting. It's like, how does this apply to me? And I often struggle with this because we're in our fund, we sell securities and we have a lot of rules that we need to follow. We can't pay for referrals. There're just a lot of things that we're not allowed to do. We have so many even rules about how we advertise. And so a lot of times when I'm trying to generalize business concepts and take it through that inductive logic phase, I'm not able to come up with an application on the other side. And so that lack of contextualization, I think, really is where the short form stuff hurts us. Find somebody who's doing what we're doing. They're going to open it all up and then we're just going to go for it. That's been a real struggle for me in my own business that I haven't really found the good solution for. So finding that guy. Sometimes the information just doesn't apply to your situation.
Right.
It may be because you're not good at contextualizing it, but it also could be because it's not. This doesn't apply.
That's very true. Sometimes what you're doing is so new, innovative, weird, different, niche that it's hard to find somebody who's talking about what it is you need to be learning. We ran into this building GreenPal. The idea of an online digital marketplace connecting buyers and sellers for local home services 10 years ago was really new. there wasn't a whole lot of practitioners of this kind of thing. There was a couple things out there. There was like TaskRabbit and Uber, Airbnb. These were platforms that connected a seller of something and a consumer of something at a local level. And so I tried to learn as much as I could from them, but certainly wasn't anybody talking about what it was that they were doing unless you really stumbled onto something. Like I mentioned earlier with the Uber. One thing I did is I would just roll up my sleeves and use these products. So for about a year, I signed up for every single one of these services that was doing something similar to what
Mhm.
we were trying to do. So there was a app called Rover and Wag,
Yep.
uh, that you could, like, walk dogs and take care of dogs. I signed up as a dog walker, got bit by several dogs, but their whole platform in the palm of my hand, so I'm taking screenshots, I'm looking at, okay, here's how they keep people engaged, here's how they craft the tone of the copy, here's the design of the product, and so taking notes every step of the way, and so I did that for Rover Wag, I delivered groceries on Instacart, delivered food on DoorDash, drove for Uber, I drove for Lyft, and so I learned more doing that
Mm.
using the services and products of practitioners and companies that were well funded, that were successful, not in my specific thing, but in an adjacent things, and then applied it to my thing because it was pretty similar. It wasn't like one thing I could just totally rip off. It was like 100 things from all of them that I then applied to our product and our experience and our UX. And it took a year and it was not fun. It was humbling. I delivered a cheeseburger to an ex-girlfriend one time. It was humbling, which is good. It's always good to be humbled, but it was what I had to do at that level of the game to figure out what the hell it is we're trying to do. How do we innovate in this space when we're the first to be doing it? Okay, here's a company that's raised $100 million who's doing something similar in dog walking. I can learn from them. And so that's one way I got through that.
Okay, that humbling experience that you're talking about, after you'd had a successful business and you're thinking, "I could probably retire," and then you start driving for Instacart.
Yeah.
A lot of people just are not willing to do that. I always say the value of hard work, just for the value of hard work, there's nothing there. It's just digging ditches when you could just rent the mini excavator, right? This doesn't have to be so difficult that we're just forcing ourselves to work hard. You found a passion about something that you really wanted to learn how to do. Who knows where that comes from? People who can't find that's a different podcast. But when you feel that inside of yourself, sometimes you just have to go out and give birth to it, even though you end up delivering a cheeseburger to your ex girlfriend.
For me, it wasn't necessarily, I don't get advice, follow your passion because I've never been passionate about lawn mowing, even though I've been involved in it in some shape or form for 25 years. In fact, I hate mowing yards. So I've never been passionate about that, even though devoting my life to this industry has taken me places in life and helped me grow in ways that never would have been possible. So I don't like that advice, but I think for me, I was passionate about progress. I was
Mhm.
passionate about growth and I was passionate about setting a goal and accomplishing it, combined with a natural, genuine discontent when things were not progressing, just feeling terrible if the business was not growing, feeling the opposite of success, failure when things weren't happening. And so discontent is what really got me through a lot of the hard periods and doing the things I didn't want to do. I certainly didn't want to walk dogs. I certainly didn't want to deliver food. I didn't want to deliver groceries, but I knew I needed to use these services to figure out how they ticked. And that's just one of 100 humbling things my co-founders and I had to do to figure this out. I think every founder does to a degree, small business or large business. Everybody does stuff they don't want to do to get to the next level. And I think it's just like, how bad do you want it? Is what it boils down to.
That's more interesting the way that you're doing it because your girlfriend's, "Oh, you're really doing well right now." Like, "I'm researching. Trust me, I'm just researching." Because when you're passionate about the thing, you're adding a layer to delivering the cheeseburger that would not be there if you just needed to do it to make ends meet. You're just, "Okay, I'm doing this because the extra money sure is nice at this point in my life when I don't have any income." Or to be able to say, instead of hating it, I am learning. My sister used to say this all the time. She worked at McDonald's for her entire high school career, much longer than anybody else would typically work there. And she said, "Do you know how many Fortune 500 CEOs started out working at McDonald's and
Yeah.
how much you can learn about business systems just by paying attention to the way that they do things?" So, as a very young teenager, this astute older sister, willing to put in the time with the ugly uniform and flipping the thing covered with grace, She was in there to learn about business, and that's what made her time at McDonald's not only bearable, but interesting. I don't say she jumped out of bed wanting to run to work every day, but she was really leveraging that experience to learn about business. Sounds like you were doing the smart way of, yeah, this is tough, but wow, this part of it is really interesting.
Totally. And the other thing you touched on was like defending it to somebody. Oh, I'm not here to make $4. I'm here to learn. I'm doing market research. Is if you ever feel that way, you may be cooked, because if you ever start a new business because of what you want other people to think about you and what perception people are going to have about you,
Mhm.
you're not going to make
Yeah.
it. It's going to have to come from within. And I've struggled with this, that the first 5 years of building this platform, building GreenPal, it was just crickets, and it was like pushing a rope up a mountain, and nobody cared. My family didn't care. My friends didn't care. Customers barely cared. And so it was like, you gotta want this, and you
Yeah.
cannot be doing it for external validation reasons, like you see on TikTok and Instagram. It's like, if you're doing it for that, like some sort of image you want to craft for yourself, and not because of something you just want to see exist in the world, or a version of yourself 10 years from now that the business is going to help carry you to, you're not going to make it because it's not there, and you're going to be constantly disappointed.
Yeah. That has so many applications to what we do in real estate too, because especially now with the advent, like you said, the fake guru, a lot of people out there selling a lot of stuff. Some of it's valuable, some of it's not. I feel like now that we're in the era of oversharing on social media, and we have podcasts where we're talking about things that are vulnerable, and we have to go post on LinkedIn every single day, and we have to put ourselves out there in a way that entrepreneurs before us have never had to do, and crafting this personal brand. And people are finding social validation from being admired online.
Mm,
Yet at the same time, I know a lot of people who are very uncomfortable with the amount of oversharing that is almost required at this point to build a successful business. And so if we're doing this to craft that social validation, that should be a side effect or a perk. If people like that, that can
right,
never be the main purpose of what we're doing. The main purpose of what we're doing is solving other people's problems with passion. I,
right.
I this is an issue for me as a real estate investor, especially on my small multifamily. So I'm going to give a little aside right here. Sometimes I do this little teaching moment in the podcast, but I'm going to tell you like why I self-manage some of my properties. We own large commercial buildings, right? But for tax purposes, because I'm a full-time real estate investor, I basically get to take all of my depreciation losses, not just off of my passive income like rental income or distributions. I could actually take my depreciation and offset my active income. So when my husband
I
had a
see.
W-2, we could offset his active income with my depreciation. And that's what you get when you're a full-time real estate professional is what they call it. You have to be materially involved in the management of the source of the passive income. So I had a couple of small rentals that were nearby that I would self-manage. I could go down and show it to prospective tenants. I was personally there at the open houses. If something broke, I'm the one scheduling the plumber to go in because I needed to have a few things that I was actively managing. And then our larger properties that were farther away, we could put a property manager on, and then I had to actively manage the property manager, like talking to them and making sure we're meeting frequently. Because if you're just turning everything over to a property manager, you're not really a real estate professional. So one thing that I ran into that was a real problem for me was labor shortages. So I'll give you an example that you can relate to. I discovered Roto-Rooter has an online scheduling. So I literally would tell my tenant, if there's a leak, because I was calling the plumber,
Go
calling
there.
back, like, can you come
Yeah,
show up this time? And I literally would just tell the client, meaning my tenant, get on Roto-Rooter, schedule. He will call me when he gets there, and I will give him my credit card, and he will fix whatever needs fixed. And if
brilliant.
it's under $100 or $150, they could just pay for it themselves, and they would either credit off next month's rent or just reimburse them. It's like a tenant empowerment type of, because when you're self-managing, you need these property management tools. In the duplex and the triplex, nobody would mow the lawn. I had to pay one of the tenants to go and mow the lawn because the labor shortage was so bad that I would literally be standing there in a yard and I'd see the neighbor's lawn service come up and I would say, "Hey, can I book you?" And they're like, "We just don't have room in our schedule." So where's the Roto-Rooter version, the online scheduling for lawn care? We're self-managing our properties either because it has tax benefits, because we're nearby, because we can, or it's a new rental and it can't really afford property management yet, or you're basically making nothing. This service is, to me, now I'm like texting my apartment managers who are struggling with finding consistent labor on our yard care. We actually just fired our landscaper on one of our properties. I'm like, "Hey, have you guys heard of GreenPal yet?" We guys are trying to do that. Because now we can get in the Home Depot style. You get 3 guys and they call you. So tell me about GreenPal specifically. Let's drill down. Who is the ideal customer? Who is the person like me when they find out about this? They're like, "Where have you been all my life?" Tell me about what that person looks like. And maybe my listener will identify with themselves.
I love the Roto-Rooter example. That's awesome. Are you gonna find one solution to solve all your headaches in property management? No, but you need to take one thing at a time. And like, why did I get this citation from the city that my grass is 4 feet tall? Let me just focus on solving this one damn problem so it never happens again. And this, you do that 100 times, and after a year, you wake up in a different world. Well, I have spent a decade, my co-founders and I, building a solution for just one of those one things, and that is the lawn mowing. So, as a homeowner, home renter, or a manager of multiple properties, if you want to spend 5 or 10 grand a year on landscaping maintenance, you don't have any problem. There's many landscapers that have account managers, and they will set you up on a program, and you pay monthly, and you don't have this problem. But if you wanna spend $40 to mow the yard every 2 weeks, which is somebody who's working full time and they don't have time to mow the yard every week, or a single mother who doesn't really own a push mower, doesn't wanna mow her own yard, this is the perfect solution for that use case. Because no landscapers want to deal with that type of customer use case because it's just not profitable for them.
Mhm.
We've built a platform that organizes it, makes it all seamless to where it is profitable for them, where they can organize 100 of these biweekly stops or even weekly stops that are 35, 40, $45 per cut. We're not talking about a $500 a month landscaping package here. We're talking about just basic lawn mowing. And we make it efficient in a way where landscapers can do it and offer a kind of Amazon, Uber, Instacart experience where you just order these folks off the shelf and you don't have to wonder, where's the lawn guy? Did he show up this week? Did he not? Because everything is kept on track and held accountable on a rolling basis. Every time the service provider comes out to mow your yard, you get a picture of the mowed yard and you can approve it. Or if there's an issue, you can raise the issue and pause payment before you pay them. And this happens like on a rolling basis, on a continual basis. So there's not like this reconciliation at the end of the month of, okay, how many times did you mow? Did you actually mow 3 times? How do I know that? I don't live there. So it's a system that holds providers accountable, but also makes it really super efficient for them to do 100 of these in a week and offer a consistent, smooth experience for consumers. And so a lot of consumers use it for basic lawn mowing, but about 20% of our business is real estate investors. So we've got a dashboard where you can upload 2 properties, or if you want 200, and you can manage the lawn care for properties all over the United States. And we have several investors that do that. I think we have a group out of Atlanta that has over 500 properties on the network. And it's really good for somebody who's in charge of this kind of thing or somebody who's managing their portfolio of 5 or 10 homes, because then you have visibility to understand, okay, I've got 5 homes all over the region. I've got 5 different providers or maybe 3 different providers. This is what the pricing is for each of them. This is the schedule for each of them. This guy actually dropped off the face of the earth. I didn't realize that, but the system recognized that and fetched me new quotes. Okay, hire a new guy for this property because sometimes these guys do disappear. It's like the case of the disappearing lawn guy is what our platform is built to solve. And so now you have visibility into this. And so if there is an issue, you can quickly fix it, but also preventing 90% of the issues that happen is what it's built to do.
Yeah, and if this problem has gotten so bad for us over the last couple of years, we just recently sold our big house and moved into a townhouse because of the lawn. And when we first
Nice.
bought the big house, we went in and she had just planted a bunch of trees and didn't really think about how big these were gonna get. So 15 years later, they move out. We buy the house. I'm like, this is a tree disaster. So we ourselves, and we're handy people, right? We've done a lot of this stuff over the years. So we take down all the trees and we have a giant brush pile on the street in front of our sidewalk. And the cities, you can't have that there. And we literally could not find a landscape haul off to come just take it to the green waste. And we finally ended up begging somebody we knew who owned a landscaping company who he didn't have time for us to let us borrow his trailer. We put on our minivan and took 2 trips to get all of these trees out of there. And that was the first realization I had. Sometimes your money just isn't green enough. Like we literally could not hire somebody to come and do this for us. And again, this lawn was just like the bane of our existence. They could not find someone to come out and do it. And finally, we like, I can't do this anymore. Like we're ripping it all out and just literally replacing everything with just like turf, right? It was that bad. It was that much of a hassle. And our kids were out there, huge work days. It was always getting away from us. I'm like, I'm trying to run a business here, not take care of this yard. I can't have a yard anymore, which is funny because I used to have a farm and I couldn't even take care of a suburban lot. And then what we ended up doing there when we moved into the townhouse, we rented out the rental house, and she was a contractor, like a general contractor, and the
Oh,
yard,
nice.
she couldn't get somebody to come out and take care of that yard either, and it would get away from her. My neighbors would call me and say, "Hey, your yard's kinda getting a little out of control over there, just FYI," and I knew it was eating her alive. I knew because it ate us alive, and I just felt like, "This is ridiculous. Why can nobody find a landscaper?" So if that's you listening, like,
It's it's
we
it's it's
moved.
a lot harder than it should be. And so the challenge is, how do I find somebody that's reliable, that wants this business, that will do a
Yes.
good job for me for a fair price? And the tragedy of it, they're out there. You just can't find them because they're just getting started. They don't have any kind of visibility. You search on Google, you're not going to find them. And even if you did find them, how do you know which ones are good or which ones aren't? And so you're just like dialing for dollars,
Yeah.
and you have to poll these people. You have to call 10 or 20 of them to figure out which one's good and which one is serious and which one's reliable. And so GreenPal's job is to aggregate all of these small service providers, put them in a system to where they're graded and scored based on their performance. So then you quickly understand, okay, this is the small service provider that is like a one man show that it has 20 customers, wants to get to 100, wants this business and is going to quote it for me and I can hire them. But if you're trying to find somebody, it's hard to do that unless you're going to dedicate half a day to it.
Yeah, and it's magnified every time you have a home service. It's, "Okay, I need a plumber and I need a"
Right.
finding a handyman for the properties I self-managed has been a nightmare. And then we've got the same thing, like, those that have a pool. Now we need to go hire pool service. It's just finding that list of people, and we have a property in a small town where people are like, "I only take cash." Oh, like, are you being serious right now? Because you want me to basically fudge my taxes so you can fudge. Yeah,
Funny,
it's
it's
crazy.
like a lot of these proprietors still operate in the 90s and or they may not have been alive in the 90s, but they operate like they're in the 90s.
Yes.
And it's funny, we deal with that too. Modernizing these small service providers into a digital experience is
Mhm.
a lot of the challenges we face. And it's almost like you hire a property manager, a certain percent of the value they bring is the Rolodex of
Yes.
contractors that will actually do the stuff that it takes to keep a house from not crumbling. So that's a strange thing. And then another strange thing that's happening like on a big, like a macro basis is we're in this weird period right now where we're still in like the zone of young people and just Americans in general not wanting to do these trades.
There's no
Um,
air conditioning out there.
your plumbers, your AC guys, your painters are either Latino or guys in their 50s. And there's this weird thing that's happening where your millennials and when your Gen Zers don't want to do these trades. But what we're starting to see happen is a lot of these white collar jobs are just now starting to get eviscerated by AI.
Yeah, yeah.
And so a lot of these people are starting to realize that, damn, I just went to school for 4 or 5 years for an art degree that's gonna pay me 42,000 a year. I can go make 100 grand a year being a plumber. I'm not too proud to do that. And we're starting to see that where it's becoming not like cool, but it's becoming like viable
Res
to come back to these blue collar trades. And I think in the next 5 years, we're gonna see a big reversion back to young people wanting to do these blue collar trades. And I think we're gonna see a time very soon where your plumber makes more than your lawyer for 2 reasons, that they're scarce, plumbers are scarce, and also lawyers are gonna be commoditized by AI.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
not just lawyers, but other white collar jobs like that. A lot of accountants and tax advisors and things of that sort are gonna get super commoditized by these learned language models. And so that's gonna be interesting to see that unfold in the next 5 years.
But one thing that you're doing for the Gen Z population, you can't fix the mobile air conditioning, right? That's a problem. They don't want to be crawling around in basements as electricians when it's hot out there. But one thing you're helping to fix is to digitize and modernize these businesses because these young US native educated kids who are very comfortable with computers and video games and all of these things. And they're out there trying to figure out how to run a modern business, a digitized business, and it gives them an edge. And so if you're able to help them tap into those systems, then they'll be able to not have to buy every service out there. Like, I need this subscription and that subscription and this subscription of invoice and that. And
Right.
it gets expensive to run these modern businesses. And you're allowing them to function in their area of expertise, which is to not take cash, to take digital forms of payment, to do online scheduling, all of these things that are going to give businesses an edge. And younger people really relate to that.
The sweet spot service provider for us, somebody in their 20s who is like digitally native. Like they grew up with the smartphone.
Mhm.
They've had this their whole life. They don't remember a time not having a supercomputer in their pocket. And so that's just their default.
Mhm.
When they look to start a lawn mowing business, they start with the phone. And so that type of person does a lot better on the platform because they adopt all of the digital ways of doing things on top of our technology and they run circles around everybody else if they have the work ethic. Our platform enables them to get all the customers they want, keep it all organized in one place, optimize the route for them. It's a CRM for all of their clientele, holds them accountable to just do one thing, do a good job for their customers, and then helps them get invoice and get paid quickly within 24 hours. And so they do really good because somebody who is maybe in year 10 of their small business has already all of the scar tissue around old ways of doing things
Mhm.
and trying to reverse that and undo all of that and do it a new way is a lot harder for them is one thing we've noticed.
Yeah, my dad used to joke. He was a software developer, systems process designer back like he started in the 70s, right? And I'd say, "Dad, what's the hardest thing about your job?" He says, "Getting people to use the tool, like, just spent 2 years following them around to design." So
Exactly.
pencil does just as good a job. So
And
he
now
did
here we
a
are 50 years later, that's we
still the
still
problem.
deal with that.
Still the problem. But I feel like I need another subscription service, like I need a hole in my head. And so managing a business is basically a basket of subscription services. And so if you can help to remove that friction from a very small business owner who's just starting out, maybe not a one-stop shop, but you're going to cover a lot of these bases for them because they're in the same thing. If I have to find a handyman and an electrician and a pool guy and a landscaper, they've got to go out and figure out, okay, how do I do my CRM? How do I do my invoicing? How do I do my online booking? All of this stuff. And they've got to pull in services in the same way by researching one. And if you can uh, aggregate even portion of those, it's going to make a huge difference, make the business more efficient so they can just focus on showing up on time and cutting your grass.
Yeah.
That's really the distraction from doing the thing.
We've been hard on these guys, and we have a lot gals too. We have a lot of women service providers on our platform. There's over 50,000 of them that use our system. And the reality is nobody teaches any of us ever how to run a small business. And so these new entrants into this business, they're coming to the starting block with, I don't know, like maybe an employee mindset or just shooting from the hip. They don't know what it means to run a small business. And so how do they learn? They learn it through negative interactions with consumers. And so basically the marketplace is who's teaching them how to run a business in a way. And so our platform's job is to help cut that in half or maybe by 90%, those learning cycles of what it means to be proactive, what it means to be on time, what it means to be organized, what it means to like price correctly, not too high, not too low, because we don't want you pricing too low. You're going to go out of business. And so all of these things that go into running a small business, it's like our system is a coach in a box for the small landscaper who just does one thing, mows yards and basic landscaping services.
Yeah.
And wouldn't be able to do any of that had we not just focused on this one thing. I get the question I get a lot is, okay, awesome. When are you going to do it for home painting? And I'm like, what you don't realize is like some things are similar, but all of these trades operate in such different ways. There's so many different nuances. There's so many different problems that you have to solve like on a specific basis that is, you really do have to focus on just one use case. And that's what GreenPal does for lawns.
Yeah. It almost would make more sense for you in the future if you incubate other similar companies. So somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, we want to do this for other home services." Or I always make the analogy, the piano lesson, the neighborhood piano lesson teacher who my daughter, when we
That
moved
would be
back into the
awesome.
area, she said, "Can I start taking, voice lessons again from so and I said, "Sure, free." She never bills us. I'm like,
Yeah, oh,
yeah.
that's so true. That is so true, and that exists in our industry as well. One of the biggest problems for small landscapers is managing their accounts receivable, managing their
Yep.
invoicing,
I
billing for the
manage it
work
for
they did.
her.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Up
so
on the
true.
calendar. I'm like,
It's
I will here's when I had a lesson, here's when we paid you, here's my thing, and I'm managing that for her. And I have a degree in entrepreneurial management. That's a thing. I didn't even know that was a thing till I went back to
nice.
business school. And I still never learned how to manage a small business. It was
No,
basically how to manage venture capital for mid-range startups as an employee of a mid-range startup. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I've run a lot of businesses, a lot of small businesses. And I'm not learning a whole lot here that is
you
gonna help me
nailed it.
out
You
with my own
nailed it. The
business.
only way to learn how to do this is just by doing it wrong, putting the reps in. I dealt with the same thing when I was running my little lawn mowing business, through college. I would go to school at night and mow yards all day, and I remember going to night class, showing up with grass clippings all over me, and, like, sitting in a business management course, like, "This is not how business is operated. Like, what the hell
Mhm.
did we learn?" Like, there was this huge disconnect between the curriculum in the school and what was actually happening on the ground hustling up a business, getting a business going. And so
Yes.
there is no school. The only way to learn it is by doing it. And that's why it sucks to hire a lot of these service providers because they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out, okay, how do I balance servicing my customers with estimating, with invoicing, with marketing, with managing my Instagram, with putting stuff on TikTok, and the list goes on 100 different things they have to juggle, and that's the reason why the experience sucks. And so if you can find these platforms that help streamline that for buyers and sellers, it can help solve some of the problems.
Yeah, and I'm willing to pay more for it too because, like, this Roto-Rooter online scheduling saves me a lot of time, and they charge more than my little neighborhood guy down the street. I'm willing to pay more for Molly Maid to show up when they said they were gonna show up
Yep.
because it saves me so much time, and it's not like I want to take all that time to go and build my business and hustle up new clients. Sometimes I just want to not do it because I wanna watch more TV, but that kind of relaxation time where it
Yeah.
gives me extra time to go out and go on a hike or connect with my kids or recharges and refreshes me. So when it is time to go out and build new business, I really do. And I think a lot of business owners forget that if you're going to pay a little bit of extra for the convenience, they feel like they can't pay extra because they're not using that time that they're saving to go hustle up more business. They're using that time to relax. And I'm like,
Right.
no, the relaxation is so critical to
Yep.
being motivated to go and drive your business development. And so that's my little key of the day. Pay for the convenience.
It's worth it because then you can spend that time on higher leverage stuff, working on the
Yes.
business and working
Or on
on
yourself.
yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
You can free up that time and that stuff's draining anyway. So yeah, you
Yeah.
make a really good point.
Yeah, and you've made a couple of comments here while you're talking about working in the business, on the business, and on yourself. Because a lot of people will talk about working in the business. You shouldn't be working in the business. You should be working on the business. How can we shift that over to working onto it more for that prep? That's important. But then you also added the layer of working on yourself. And for me, sometimes that is going hiking because I don't have to worry about finding a landscape guide because that I just described like how stressful that's been for me over the years.
Totally.
Putting that stress onto somebody like GreenPal or Rotary or whatever I'm using to be able to say, and instead I'm going to go on a hike. So when I come back, now I'm refreshed and I can actually go do something. I can work on my business and on myself because you have to work in the business. I think it's a pipe dream to say you can only work on it.
Oh
But
man, you nailed it. Yeah. And I think that's one of the misconceptions and one of the stumbling issues that I think a lot of new founders come up against is they want to skip the business part. The guru told me to delegate and systemize. So I don't have to go talk to that customer. I don't have to go hand crank these sales. I don't have to do these cold calls because the course I took said I should be systemizing and delegating. It's like, you don't have 10 customers. Spectrum looks like this. Level one is like 90% in the business, 10% on the business. And then
yeah,
maybe after you get your first 50K or 100K in revenue, then maybe it's 80/20, and then maybe it's 70/30. When you get it to 50/50, now you've got the promise of a business. And then
yes,
as time goes on, those buckets change. But the first couple of years, you're the one man band. And I think a lot of new founders, particularly these young ones that are being sold a lie, want to skip all that and they don't want to do the hard grunt in the trenches work. They want to fast forward. I'm in the ivory tower just calling shots. It's not the way it works. And so I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I think that's laziness on either end of this when you're too far on either end of the spectrum. Like if you're just going to work in your business and you're going to be the guy out there cutting lawns and you're never thinking about systematizing, you're never thinking
Right.
about efficiencies in the business. You're lazy mentally in that case. You're just going to take the harder physical route to go cut the yard. But on the other end of it, there's laziness too. Like I just finished reading $100 million leads and there's no magic. You spend 4 hours a day doing cold outreach. I'm sorry. Like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give you the formula to go lift weights in the gym the easy way.
It's so true.
It's
It's
lazy
lazy
on either
on
end of
both
that.
ends. Yeah, it really is because you're right. In the first years, you gotta hustle, you gotta grind, you gotta be in there, like, hand cranking everything, but then as time goes on, you need to be holding yourself accountable. By year 2, I should have some of these things delegated, and I should know how to delegate them. I in my first business, I had a business partner that I never could change his mindset on that. In year
Mhm.
10, he would take pride and would take, like, personal pride in the fact that he would spend all day driving to Atlanta to go pick up a load of trees and bring it back because he was doing that. He was not
Yeah,
too
no.
good to do that, and here we are, we've got 100 employees, millions of dollars in revenue, and he felt that he was elevated to a degree because he was doing these certain tasks that weren't glamorous, when in fact, that is the lazy thing. What we need to be doing is poring over this spreadsheet of labor hours and figuring out where we're losing money and looking
Mhm.
at this spreadsheet of customers and figure out which ones are cold, which ones canceled us, and why. Developing systems to solve those problems at the root cause. That's the hard work. Jumping in the truck and just riding around all day looking at jobs when you could develop a system for somebody else to do that is actually the lazy thing.
Oh, boy, that's so good. There's a saying in real estate investing where basically you have calluses on your hands and paint under your fingernails. And I that's valuable to understand what things are about there so that you can say that I've done the thing. But at the same time, it's at what point are you going to do the more important thing and the harder thing, which is all spreadsheets?
It's harder. A headache from crunching the numbers, figuring out why something's not working at a unit economic level, a lot harder than painting a house when a tenant moves out.
Yeah.
And one
You
might
got to
be
be,
2 hours of work and the other might be 20.
yeah, you got to be
It's
willing to do
harder.
it. If you show up at work and there's a fire you gotta put out, you gotta know how and you gotta be willing. You're
Right,
not too like you said, you're not too proud to go
right,
deliver a cheeseburger. But at the
right.
same time, that taking you know, here's where the mindset game comes in because I see a lot of people taking pride in having the calluses and the paint under their fingernails, which I do as well. I like knowing how to do this stuff and I like being able to do this stuff. If our service providers have let us down, but then there's this level of blame that I have to give myself for I did not do a good job of managing the service provider. I did not do a good job of finding the service provider. And now I'm stuck with paint under my fingernails because of a failure on my part. It's not a thing of pride to have paint under my fingernails. It's a sign of failure.
If you want it to be a certain level, there's a lot of proprietors, a lot of founders that are fine with being small. And if you are, then it's cool to ride around and look at jobs all day and manage issues hands on and go unclog the toilet when the tenant calls you personally. That's fine. If all you ever want to do is have 5 rental properties and maybe a certain degree of sales, that's fine. But then don't complain when you haven't achieved the levels of success that you want to achieve because you haven't invested in the hard work. You haven't done the hard work. You might think the hard work is cleaning out that toilet. It's not. That's the easy work. That's the lazy work. The hard work is getting in there, figuring out, okay, tenant, here is a system and a protocol that you need to follow. It's self serve. Whenever the toilet's clogged, you do this every single time. And you can scale that to 1,000 properties if you want to. That's the hard work. Most people aren't willing to do the hard work, and that's why as the success scale gets bigger and bigger is why so many fewer people up there, and I have to hold myself accountable for all of these things as well. It's hard to do. I hate looking at spreadsheets. I hate looking at data. I would rather, like, talk to customers, but at the end of the day, that's the highest leverage activity. I'm a lot better off doing an hour of that a day than 10 hours of something else.
Okay. Yeah, and I am of the mindset I'm minimalist. Like the more stuff that you own, the more stuff owns you. And so I
Yeah.
do really struggle with this concept of scale and business and how big do I want to get? because it's not totally in my control. How hard do I want to work to get big? But then I'm depending on, in my case, customers, investors coming into our fund and recognizing I don't control that, but I want to get bigger? So these are questions that every business owner has to grapple with. How
Exactly.
much do you want to scale? How much work is it going to take? How do you control what you can control? And the biggest thing you can control is how many people are buying stuff from you. It's the biggest factor we don't control.
Exactly. I'm pretty sure I know everything it takes to maybe become a billionaire, but I'm not willing to do the things it takes to become a billionaire. And I know
Yeah.
that. And I'm okay with that. It's like everybody has to make that choice for themselves. One of the cool things I observed running my first landscaping business, because I was around other guys in different trades, was the concept of blue collar millionaire. I saw so many small business owners that maybe owned one or two dump trucks or had a
Yep.
painting crew or a roofing crew. And these guys had lake houses and they had $200,000 boats and they drove
Yep.
100,000 trucks and they owned 4 or 5 different rental properties. And so they had like the tradesmen had more wealth, the lawyer, doctor, typically successful person by society standards. The trade guy had more wealth than they did. So that was an interesting thing. And it's like, if you want to stay small, profitable, and take what I call the low quality revenue, which is you making money with grinding out your business, and invest in high quality revenue like real estate, equities, bonds, things like that, rinse and repeat, your contemporaries will never
Good.
catch up with you. That's a good path also. You don't have to get big.
So much good stuff there. I like the term low quality revenue for high quality revenue. Truly hard work, active income versus truly passive income where you're investing in someone else's business and everywhere along the spectrum in between. So much good stuff there. Just being intentional and thinking about it and planning ahead and knowing what you want and understanding your controllables to be able to say, can I do this with the amount of work that I'm going to put in? Sometimes the answer's yes. And sometimes the answer is no. But I'll tell
Internal
you,
motivation, be honest with yourself.
I appreciate all the work that you've put into building GreenPal because this is a real problem that you're out there solving for a lot of people, causes me a lot of stress as a property owner. And it, even if I wasn't self-managing my own properties, just the fact that we've had to hire and fire so many landscapers over the years and handyman and things like that. This is the cutting edge of where trades are going. And you're in there for lawn services. You're the Airbnb of lawn services. I think it's fantastic. And in kind of setting that trend, maybe somebody else will start using your lawn service so they can figure out how to do this in a home painting or handyman services because this is where it's going. And you get on board or you get behind. So thank you
Absolutely.
so much for sharing that.
Better myself.
All right, Brian, I always ask at the end of every show, how do people get a hold of you directly? I know they can go to greenpal.com if they want to book some services. But if somebody wants to talk to you directly, what's the best way for them to do that? And second of all, I always ask, especially when we've got a CEO of a company where you're maybe needing them to go to the website, why should somebody who wants to get a hold of you directly, like what type of person would benefit by talking to you directly?
Yeah. So anybody want to hit me up, find me on LinkedIn, just Google my name, LinkedIn, and it'll pop right up. Or Instagram. I post a lot of stuff there too. Yeah. Hit me up if you're building something similar to what GreenPal is and you want a building green, but for home painters. Here's what I'm struggling with and some specific questions that I can help with. Don't just say, "Hey, here's my business plan. Review it. Let me know what you think." Like questions. I've got my first 5 vendors and I've got my first 10 customers, and here's the problems I'm seeing. How did you guys solve it? I'd be glad to help.
Yes.
Specific tactical ways that I can help you think about that. Or if you are a property manager and you're like, "Hey, I'm thinking about using GreenPal. Here's some questions." Or your property manager, you're like, "Hey, I just used GreenPal for a property and I have some questions about this or that." Or I wish it would do even better. I wish it would do this. Love that's free R&D for us and to make it better for users. So yeah, feel free to ping me and I'm always available.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You delivered a lot of value today. I have this whole list of questions that I didn't even get a chance to ask you. So I would love to
I'll have to do it
have you
again.
back in a little while, catch up with where you are, talking about transition from how you ran a business that everybody wants and everybody needs. So growing and then being like, oh well, because that's more like managing a service business. You got to manage staff and booking and all that, but you don't really have to manage the sales and marketing because you have more customers. Then you get to the point, okay, now we actually have to implement a sales process. I'm super curious about that. So much more stuff. Like we'll have to do it again sometime and talk about business because I think it's super valuable to the listener who may be trying to get a more efficient, more hands off business so that they can have some semi passive income in their own business. and also how to increase their efficiencies and their revenues so that they have more money to invest passively. That's what the show is all about. So thank you so much for the value dropped and looking forward to hearing more in the future.
Thank you, Emma. I appreciate it. I had fun.
All right. You, the listener, you want to get in touch with us? Go to investwithemma.com, jump on my calendar, free call, ask me anything you want. I will not look at a random listing on LoopNet and tell you if it's a good deal or not, but I can teach you how to figure out whether it is or not. I could teach you how to invest your own money passively. If you want to look at the opportunities that we have in our fund, 100% passive. Like we loan money to flippers. They're doing the work. We're just lending them the money. And I'll tell all my flippers about GreenPal as well, because getting that house ready for sale was sometimes a little bit of a challenge, finding someone to come out and do it. So if you want any more information about that, I would love to hear about your passive income adventure dreams and point you in the right direction to help you get there as fast and as efficiently as possible by introducing you to anybody in my network that you think would be helpful. If I can help you, if they can help you, that's how we all get stuff done in this business, is just networking and making introductions and building relationships of trust. And I'm looking forward to being one of the people, hopefully on your short list of people that you trust and want to invest with. So thank you again, and we'll catch you next week.